I didn't realize this guitar was for sale. Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. Tomorrow is Christie's Jeff Beck Guitar Collection auction. However, please keep in mind, there is a 26% buyer's premium on your bid, and then don't forget about taxes. But to start it off, the Oxblood Les Paul. Whenever anybody talked about Jeff Beck in the Gibson world, they would always talk about his Oxblood. In my eyes, it's his #1 guitar. But he first got this one while touring in the US in late 1972, and he used it as his primary instrument for the next 2 years. And it has a whole long other history here where we could make this the entire episode. But essentially, it's a 54 Les Paul that got routed out for humbuckers, and it's iconic because of that. Anytime I see a wrap-tail humbucker-equipped Les Paul, I think Jeff Beck. But things that stand out to me, it looks like he preferred to use the Fender bullet strings. But in order to use that on the high E string, he had to carve the pickup ring out just a tad. But just looking at it, it's definitely been rode hard. Looks like we got to replace truss ride cover with Schaller style tuners. And then, this is interesting. We've got cream back plates. Looks like somebody put a strap button back here at one point. It's got plenty of wear and tear, but the back of the neck is actually just straight up black. But then it goes back into that brown color. There's definitely some sort of a repair hiding there. And then we have a unique serial number. It doesn't really match what would have initially been on the guitar, but there you can see those are actually early 70s Schaller tuners. However, the finish is actually vastly different than I was expecting. It's more of like a muddy brown rather than what I usually think of when I think of the Oxblood finish. But these more professional photo shoots look a lot better. It looks like you got maybe a late 60s case with it. But they're estimating that to be between $350,000 to $500,000. That's probably going to be a Jimmer, say, if he's still buying stuff. But if that sounds too expensive for you, here's the signature inspired by Jeff Beck Artist Prototype #1 from 2008. I've always been interested in checking one of these out, but being able to see the real guitar and this side by side, you can see how good and or bad of a job they did. Now this one doesn't have all the dirt and grime on it, but at least they've got the aging to the binding, the uncovered pickups that definitely have a little bit of rusting to them. And even though this doesn't have the bullet strings on it, they did recreate that, so I'll give that to them. And some of the elements are there for the headstock. And oh wow, I would actually say they did a really good job on the back. I mean, maybe not the exact wear and tear, but as far as the finish and going into that more brownish color, it's got the ugly filled-in strap button. Even the scratch on the neck, although not the exact style of tuner, that thing's pretty cool. And apparently this one was actually used by him. Estimated between 20 and 30,000 pounds, that one could get interesting. But then it looks like he has a 2010 release, estimated to be about half as much. Let's see, what's the story here? That looks more of like a tribute. Like it's not aged, doesn't have all the stuff going on. Man, I've been thinking of Oxblood the wrong way as associated to his guitar. And this one has like the later 70s style Schallers. It's got a cool dark back though. I bet we could be surprised how crazy this one goes just because buying it from his estate sale, and it's a tribute to his signature Les Paul. But next up, I got a chuckle seeing one of these in his collection, the Epiphone Peewee. That's one of those ones where if you just want something out of his collection, you might be able to pick it up, I would imagine, for like $2,000. And generally speaking, these are like $150 max. But I think this might actually be one of the earlier ones. It's like the bridge isn't even lining up with the neck properly. I wonder if it just needs an adjustment or if it's actually produced wrong. Because at bare minimum, your string alignment is way off. And the whole headstock just looks strange for one of those, like somebody applied the decals after the fact. But sure enough, you go to the back, it's got the Epiphone decals too. Probably just something he got through artist relations would be my guess. I do have a video on a Les Paul Peewee, actually a whole entire series where I crazily upgraded it too, if you're interested in checking that out. Run it with 13 gauge strings and you can have a decent time. But next up, I was curious about these pickups. So over here it says probably circa 1958 through 60. So at first glance, super worn in. Looks like he might have some burn marks over here. Lots of rust going on. Maybe a broken bobbin, could be dirt. Yeah, those look pretty decent from here, but I'm far from a PAF 100% expert. But it's got the things like the L tooling marks. I don't think I'm going to put my hat in the ring for exactly what it is, because we've got the regular as well as slotted style. When it comes to that much money, I don't like to talk and, sway somebody in one way or the other. But, what is this? Says circa 1959 with a later 72 neck. All right, so we've got a two-piece top, relatively plain. We've got a pretty convincing knob right here, something that's definitely been replaced, and then two that I think could match that. ABR1 bridge, uncovered pickups. That's kind of a cool touch. Inlaid JB, Jeff Beck. Then we switch on over back here. Every time I see this tuner style now, I'm going to think about Jeff Beck. It's basically Schaller's version of a Grover at that particular point in time, but it's got that Made in USA style stamp. That would make sense for 72-ish. With some pretty decent wood grain, and then the back of the body looking like so. But you can't forget about the headstock on this one. That's exciting. The Gibson, it's got the flower pot, and then some sort of like a wooden veneer on that. That's pretty fascinating. But going through this, apparently this is the Yardburst? Yeah, that thing that Gibson just recently did a reissuing of. It looked completely different at that point in time. But apparently Jimmy Page as well as Jimi Hendrix have played this guitar. I mean, this was his main instrument in the late 60s. And they actually have photo proof of those guys playing it. Man, I didn't realize this got so heavily modified. I could see how somebody might be interested in purchasing this, because that's another iconic guitar of his. And that's before we even get to any of his Fenders. But this is how they reissued it. I would absolutely be elated to see this get a reissue, how it stands today, simply because of how unique that headstock is. Here's another one that might be good to watch out if you just want a nice Les Paul from his collection. This one is just from 2020. It wasn't really that long ago. It's got a pretty nice top, and it's from the beginning of when they did their last major changes to the reissues. It looks like it got used a little bit. That's not Murphy Lab aging. Or at the same time, maybe it could be. A little hard to tell sometimes, as we don't have any description on this one. But check out this pretty sweet 335. It has some very interesting elements to it. So a little bit more of like an orange tangerine burst is what the hue is faded into. Looks like we might have had some sort of a filled-in toggle switch hole, but it's got the small block inlays, so it's definitely not like a late 50s, early 60s one, but that headstock looks so good. And even appears to have like a little flower thing put on our truss rod cover. But those are definitely replaced tuners, not that it matters on a player's grade model like this, and it's got some great finish checking with Schaller strap blocks. Then looks like some sort of an ES-175 from 1991. I'd say the most notable feature about this one is the natural blonde finish. I like the wood grain on the back. It's like super ultra wavy and then maybe a little bit more crazy here. But you can definitely see one of those old rubber stands really bit that one. And it also rested against it right there. But I was hoping to see a promo stamp on this one as they did in that era. But these additional photos show us, yep, it's got the burn marks on the top tube. Not as bad as I was expecting on the edges. But I can confirm that is a 1991. But wow, that crown looks very strange on that. Cool, they even have a photo of them playing it. Now we can pick out a few of the more interesting guitars. Here's a Fuji Gen Les Paul style thing that's supposed to be Roland ready, so it should be some sort of a synth type thing. That looks a little bit too complicated just to explain by looking at it, but you can see the controls here that it affects, as well as the guitar's volume and tone. So it's just a combination of all those synthesizers and electric guitars. Sometimes these sound good, sometimes not, but an interesting GR branding. I'm a bit worried though, there's no truss rod adjustment up here, and I'm not sure if there's one down there either. And it's also a set neck, so hopefully it's at least steel reinforced. But there it is. It does have the roll-in connectors. Cool, so it's got all the controls on there. And if this is truly from 78, that predates Gibson toying around with that stuff. Wow, that looks way better in these photos. Here's another one of those with the roll-in synth system. Nice. But this one has some sort of a tremolo system, and it's got a plastic protector over it to tell you what all the controls are doing. That's a luxury, I'm sure. But otherwise, it seems to be fairly similar to what we were just looking at. And our roll-in system even has a nice little suitcase. But it's got a whole plethora of Grecos as well as Ibanez that utilize similar systems. I don't think I've ever seen the logo look like that before. Nice and pearl and bold. That's super awesome ultra upper fret access. At that point in time, that is crazy stuff. That's a nice little double cut. And he's got a whole row of these Ibanez. Looks like they might be a Nagoya model or something. I decided to pick this one out for obvious reasons. It's basically a Spotlight Special. But they also had some other neck-through looking ones. So figured maple top. Looks like you got all your fancy roll-in stuff in here too. Signature inlay. Pretty cool looking pickups. Always liking those fancy wooden head veneers. This one's got multiple layers of wood going on, even for the body. We can't talk about the Peewee without talking about this thing, a Witowski. Polish-built guitar, only from 2011. But yet it looks so good, naturally aged, got a nice tanned-out pickguard. It looks like it might actually play a lot better than that Peewee. So this is like a custom-made tiny guitar. And you've got a photo here of when he was presented this as a gift. And I thought this was a pretty cool 2001 Stratocaster that was inspired by his favorite pair of camouflage pants that he got from his friend in the military. His wife called up Fender and said, "Hey, make this for him." And they did. I mean, without that, would I be that interested? No. But sometimes the story makes it more unique. If anything, this is kind of like a Paisley Stratocaster, just with a different design. And it's definitely suffered some similar finish checking lines, as you see on those. And they rounded up this photo of him with it backstage. And this is his 56th Fender Telecaster, known as the Tele-Gib. It's another one of those really big high-dollar ones, where basically it's all Telecaster except for our pickups. But you can read through this whole lot essay if you want to learn more about it. But you've got the humbuckers in it, super worn through. And all things considered, for how much it was used, it's in relatively good condition. I think that's going to wrap it up for tonight's episode. Feel free to check out Christie's website to check out even more, because there's like 128 different items here. And feel free to register to bid. You should still have a couple of hours by the time this one's aired. But thank you, Troglodytes, for tuning in, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.